Hello everyone, today we are going to be watching some Apex clips. And for today's case, we're going to be discussing Daniel LaPlante. Even though LaPlante is in jail for murder, he is more well known for crimes that he committed before the murders. Now, there is going to be a warning right here, viewer discretion is advised. We are going to be talking about violence and there will be mention of sexual assault, though we will not go into details. Alright, let's get started with his childhood. Daniel LaPlante was born in Townsend, Massachusetts in 1970. He didn't have a good childhood. He was sexually, emotionally, and physically abused by his father growing up. Daniel didn't have very many friends growing up. His classmates thought he was weird and creepy, and he didn't have very great hygiene. The school eventually sent him to a psychiatrist who diagnosed him with hyperactivity. But instead of helping Daniel, his psychiatrist began to sexually abuse him as well. When Daniel hit his teen years, he began breaking into houses and stealing things. As he got bored with this, he began moving things around in people's houses and leaving items behind to mess with their minds. It is speculated that on one of these break-ins is how he got Annie Andrews' number. In 1986, Daniel began calling Annie. They were both about 15 or 16 at the time. He told her he got her number from one of her schoolmates, and that they both live in the same town. On the phone, Daniel described himself as a good-looking, athletic blonde, and convinced Annie to go out on a date with him even. When he showed up for the date, though, she was surprised to see a dark-haired, greasy boy show up on her doorstep. Annie still chose to go on the date with him to the fair, though. On their date, eventually Annie told him that her mother had died recently of cancer. Daniel then became obsessed with her mother's death and wouldn't stop asking questions about it. She eventually found an excuse to leave after this, no longer wanting to see him again. Several days later, Annie and her sister Jessica tried to perform a seance to talk to their mother. They began hearing tapping coming from the inside walls of their home. They thought it was their mother communicating with them from the dead. After some time, though, it wasn't just the tapping. Objects began to go missing and furniture began to move across the room, so the girls began to think that they summoned a demon instead of their mother. Their father thought that they were just upset over their mother's death and looking for attention. One night, the tapping came from the basement, though, instead of the usual walls. The girls armed themselves with a knife and went down to the basement to go find out what it was. Down in the basement, they found a note that appeared to be written in blood on the walls that said, "I'm in your room. Come and find me." They ran out of the house as fast as they could to a neighbor's, until their father, Brian, by the way, came home and decided that they needed to go to counseling to deal with the death of their mother. A few weeks after the basement incident, the girls heard knocking again coming from Annie's room. In the room, written on the walls in red again, was, "I'm back. Find me if you can." The girls ran out of the house as they did before and went to the neighbors. The father came home thinking that it was just them seeking attention again, but when he went inside the house, found it in even more of a disarray than it should have been. So Brian went upstairs and went into Annie's room to find an additional message in red on the wall saying, "Marry me." And to his surprise, on the other side of the room was Daniel LaPlante. It's rumored that Daniel was wearing Brian's wife's old clothes, some makeup, and a blonde wig, and also had a hatchet in one hand. Brian got into a fight with Daniel, but Daniel managed to somehow disappear during the fight. After the police arrived, they eventually found a crawl space behind a cupboard that led behind Annie's room, with Daniel inside. Daniel had been living in that crawl space during this time. He had also created passages and tunnels for him to get around to other parts of the house, and had peepholes to watch her from other rooms in the house. Daniel spent the next year in juvenile detention for this crime. He got out, though, in October of 1987 and went back to robbing houses. In November of 1987, so just 1 month later, he obtained 2 handguns in one of his robberies. On December 1st, he broke into the Gustafsson residence. Unfortunately, Priscilla Gustafsson was home with her 2 children, 5-year-old and 7-year-olds, Abigail and William. Daniel proceeded to tie Priscilla to her bed, rape her, and shot her twice in the head. He then drowned both children in separate bathtubs. Daniel was quickly connected to the crime, and police began searching for him. In an attempt to evade capture, Daniel kidnapped a woman in her own vehicle a few towns over, but she managed to escape. Daniel was then recognized and found in a dumpster within 48 hours of the search for him beginning. Abigail's hair was found on his sock, connecting him to the crime. Daniel received 3 life sentences for the murders. Daniel LaPlante applied for a change in his sentence to allow for parole in 30 years instead of 45 in March of 2019, but was denied. Because of this, Daniel will likely remain in jail until he is at least 62 years old. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe for more content.